Welcome to On the Spot. I'm here with John Abendroth, former PGA Pro. He was in my dad's graduate class at Lincoln High School. So it was kind of connecting the dots of what we were back then and here we are now. But John, the floor is yours. Introduce yourself and we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks. It was fun looking up. I had to pull out the old yearbook to remind myself of your dad, and he was in my crew in high school, and great memories there. I'm retired mostly. I'm a PGA member and a former PGA Tour player. I've managed golf courses, taught golf for over the years, did a lot of media work. I still do Zoom interviews that go up on my hookedongolf.com site. And this is unusual because I'm usually the one asking the questions. So this is a refreshing difference today.
Yeah.
So a couple of kids, 3 grandkids, and live in Burlingame for many years and very native to the San Francisco area.
Yeah, you bring up that Hooked on Golf. I remember that show. So me, my dad and my brother used to watch that, and he always said, I went to school with that guy. So it's kind of cool to bring a little remembrance back. That's been how many years has that show aired? How long has it been?
Well, we've been off the air for probably 7 years. We did radio at KNBR for 26 years with my same partner. That's been off the air for about 4 years. So it's fun to, stay involved with media. I do a little bit with KPIX Channel 5. I do a show after the Masters and the PGA Championship. So, gives me a reason to sort of stay in touch and watch the golf and be knowledgeable about what's going on in my little world of golf. So fun stuff.
Yeah, I remember I saw the Masters thing in with Vern Glenn. And Vern Glenn, I reached out to him and he was my connect to get you on yours. Thanks, Vern, for that. But yeah, he was my guy.
Cool. Vern's a good guy, high energy. I don't think he needs a microphone. But I appreciate I've done that about 10 years with those guys. So
yeah,
it's all fun getting back in there.
Yeah. So we're going to start with the questions, John, and on the spot, you ready to go?
Sure thing.
All right, we'll hammer them out. What are your thoughts on the real estate market? Your prediction, being from your era, what do you think about it, stuff like that now, past and present?
You got to start with interest rates because that sort of dictates, what happens. I think that, like the weather, there's little microclimates, little micro markets. Burlingame and the peninsula is interesting because if you look at supply and demand, there's not much you can build unless all these high rises along the railroad tracks, the Amtrak, I should say. I have a hard time thinking that those are all going to be filled up, and you may have a kind of a boondoggle there. But you get out into the valley, Sacramento Valley, Sacramento, San Joaquin Valley, there's still some affordability there. You see businesses move their business there so that people can live in those affordable areas. It's a tough market to get in. That's the big thing.
Yeah. Cool. You want to share a struggle that you had growing up or with golf or something in life?
Well, I was pretty healthy till I was about 55.
Yeah.
And then I've had about 12 or 14 surgeries.
Oh, wow.
Between right shoulder, my back, 4 hips, a broken leg. I'd say struggles would be that.
Okay. Wow. Let me ask you this. You got a quote you want to share with us?
Quote. Well, I guess in this world that we're living in today, the end of the first quarter in 25, be careful with your money.
Yeah.
And something that keeps me grounded is this, and take a notepad out on this one, folks. Of all there is to know, I know very little. So that keeps me humble, spend within your means, and be nice to people.
Okay, good one. Good thoughts. Good ones. Let me ask you this. What show you watch nowadays on Netflix or Prime or TV that you like watching?
Well, we really enjoyed Ted Lasso, which is off the air. They're going to come back on. We've been watching this 1823, I guess it is, or 1923. Pretty violent, exciting show, but a little too violent for me. Ted Lasso had a lot of sort of, moral stories, but no violence. So,
yeah.
I don't know. I guess that's how I've grown up over the years.
Okay, good one. So who's on your Mount Rushmore of top golfers? Who's your guys?
Well, I got to throw a girl in there, a woman in there.
Okay.
I'd go with Nicholas Palmer.
Yeah.
Rory, Tiger, and Annika Sorenstam.
Okay.
So it's 5, but yeah. I don't know who would drop out of there. So Let's build a new mountain.
Okay. Who do you like as a new golfer nowadays in this day and age? What do you think? Who's your guy you like?
Well, Justin Thomas won yesterday at Hilton Head. He has great spirit. I'm a big Rory McIlroy fan. He's not young anymore. He's 37,
Yeah.
which is about your prime in golf. So I don't know. I guess I'd go with those two guys.
Okay. What are your thoughts on the Live and the PGA Tour? And do you think they might combine at one time and join up? What are your thoughts on those two?
I'm not a fan of the LIV golf at all. All the political reasons. They're trying to do what they call sport washing by, the Saudis are trying to use sports to make themselves look like good guys. And they're not just in golf, they're in auto racing and tennis, where they bought these leagues. And I think it's very sad that we can't have all the great players play under the same umbrella.
Yeah.
So I'm not a fan of it. I think if they do get back together, it's going to be a real mess. So, we'll see how that goes.
Okay. So who is the GOAT in golf? Who's your GOAT?
Well, I think Jack Nicklaus, for his longevity, and how he played over the years and all of that, there's so much Tiger talk. I mean, certainly in spurts, Tiger has been the best player, but you have to look at Nicklaus's record over the years, and I think he's probably, still the best player. There's people who are now playing that copied his swing over the years, and I think Jack is still the man.
Okay. Let me ask you this. So where'd you play college golf at? I was looking around. I think it was like Weber State, I think. I know my brother went to Sac State, so he's part of the Big Sky. But where'd you play in college, and who was the best player you played against, high school and then in the pros or college, if you want to share?
Yeah, I played at Weber State in Ogden, Utah. Not one of the great golf powerhouses, but we played in the NCAA every year, and great group of guys. I'm still in touch with some teammates. I was fortunate to play against some pretty strong players, Tom Pertzer, Craig Stadler, who won the Masters.
Okay.
Andy North, who won 2 U.S. Opens, played with them in college tournaments. High school, Lincoln High School in San Francisco had a very long winning tradition. Our team won our city championship the years that I played, and probably the best player that I played against wasn't in our league, but we played some interleague matches with a guy named Ray Leach. And Johnny Miller said that Ray Leach was the best player that he ever saw. But I guess call it comfort zone, which I'm a big believer in. Ray got onto the tour and didn't succeed.
Yeah.
But he won. He was first team All-American in college and was a great player. We called him, he was like a man among boys. And just a quick quip about Ray Leach. Whenever I'd go to a junior tournament or a high school tournament, my mom would say, "Play good, beat Ray Leach," because if you can't beat Ray Leach, you had a great round. So that's a great memory.
Now, for our listeners that some might know, did Ray Leach play in the pros, and how did his career go as far as that when he was playing?
He was from San Rafael, went to Brigham Young, was a first team All-American, won a lot of big college events and did well in the NCAA. And then he went to the PGA Tour qualifying school and made it through, I think, on his second try, and played only 1 year. Made a few cuts, but didn't really do anything that was outstanding.
Okay, cool. Let me ask you this question. What are your thoughts on the Masters and just what happened, and what do you think about that?
Well, I think the Masters was a great event, very exciting. I wrote an article on my hookedongolf.com about Rory McIlroy that I don't think any player has ever had more pressure on him than he did to win this. Part of that was that the 3 honorary starters, Gary Player, Jack Nicklaus, and Tom Watson, all picked him to be the winner. And then the other thing I said was he won ugly, meaning that he didn't play a smooth, beautiful round, but he missed short putts, made a couple of double bogeys, hit it in the trees, almost hit it in the water.
Yeah.
So, he won ugly, is what they say in sports.
Yeah. I was rooting for Brian Shambeau, and he kind of, at the end, he faltered, but he happened with the outcome of the Masters, so Rory getting it.
Well, I love seeing Rory win it.
Yeah.
DeChambeau is part of the LIV crew, and he's so hyper. And if I were his mental coach, I would tell him to turn it down about 4 notches. And he's got to be a plodder. he can't just be out there with the high energy and the Red Bull mentality and WWE. That's
Yeah,
just not how golf works in my mind.
got it. Good thoughts. What's your favorite golf course you played? I know you played a bunch.
Well, prejudice to the Olympic Club where I've grown up. Uh, in high school, I was able to join there. And Cypress Point down the Monterey Peninsula is, really fabulous. Very special place there. I got to put those as the two top ones.
Okay.
Okay, St. Andrews in Scotland.
Yeah.
Played a college tournament there.
Okay.
So we got to add that one too.
Okay. Yeah, I played at Pebble recently. I like that course. It was nice. I think Hawaii is nice too. So
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay. So what are some memories of growing up in the city? Like that, and Lincoln High School. You want to share with us?
Turkey Day football game on Thanksgiving Day was always fun. Lincoln was in it a couple of years that I was there. I still go now and then. A couple of friends of mine that went to school in the city, we go. Hanging out at the beach a little bit. And I guess really the biggest memory is just the number of friends that I'm still in touch with. I've got a neighbor across the street that was at Lincoln. His kids are now living in that house, but I see him now and then. So I think it's the friends, and the memories. And ironically, having spent a lot of my time, not just in golf, but in communications, journalism, media, I started out writing for the school paper at Lincoln. I have some photos that I took for the school paper that are in the yearbook that I looked at this week to get familiar with your dad again. And so, you never would have thought at 16 years old that what you're studying is something that you will do for the next 60 years. But
cool. How are they in sports nowadays? When last have you stepped foot on campus or been over there?
I've been over there a little bit. I'm actually helping with the golf program quite a bit. I have a foundation, the Hooked on Golf Foundation, which supports junior golf. We started a program called Youth on Course that lets kids play golf for $5, and it's become a huge national program. And so I help the golf coach at Lincoln, get golf clubs and bags and stuff like that for them. So still pretty involved.
Okay, cool, good thoughts, good stuff. What's something you did in the pandemic that you kept on today or used in today's world that you did back then?
One thing that I never would have done if it was not the pandemic was a bunch of my golf friends. We did a Zoom call once a week, and just talk smack and talk fun and talk golf and what are you up to and which what are we doing, when's this going to be done. My wife had another one with two different sets of girlfriends. There was a Tuesday night and a Thursday night, and I think mine was Friday night. I don't know, but never would have expected something like that.
Yeah. So I guess Zoom is what you kind of picked up on.
Yeah, that's something that and I was the one that bought the premium package so you could have more than 3 people and you could stay on for more than 45 minutes. And so I was the ringleader in some of that. So so that was a fun time. I think it lasted, I don't know, like 4 or 5 months doing these calls.
Yeah. No, I remember I had a couple too, groups of people, and we get on and with work and stuff. But yeah, it definitely was a change. We had to adapt to, but yeah. Let me ask you this: what age would you go back to and live at if you could go back to and live at?
I'd say like right out of college, like 22, 23 years old, something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that was right after you probably going to join the tour right after college, or how did you get on the tour? All that right after college?
And I guess that could correlate with what would you do differently. I got out of college and I went through the PGA Tour qualifying immediately, and I got my tour card when I was 22. And you don't want to have any regrets, but there's certain things I might have done a little bit differently, planned a little better, golf-wise, worked out a little bit more. But it was a great experience. And there you go. That's another COVID thing, that cat's walking across the desk. That's fun.
Everything's happened today. It's you narrated, it's happening. But go ahead and finish your thought. I know I interrupted you.
I think just at 22, would have been a time when I wouldn't have done anything differently, because the opportunities I had to play the golf tour, and I had a couple of finishes in the top 25. I had an opportunity in New Orleans on the Saturday round when I was 22, 23, was paired with Lee Trevino and
Mhm.
Tom Watson, which was just
Yeah.
unbelievable. I still feel it's like surreal that that happened among a number of other top name players that I was able to play with and meet and be around.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Are you what's your dream car? And then what are your thoughts on the EV car?
I think the EV is a great idea. You know,
Yeah.
as you read more about it, it takes electricity to charge them. There's coal used to create electricity. So, you know, that's kind of a
Mm.
funny thing. And I guess as a dream vehicle, maybe like a big M50 truck, four-wheel drive. I do a fair amount of
Okay.
fishing. You know, I
Yeah.
had a boat with a trailer, but I didn't have a vehicle big enough to tow it. But I think
Yeah.
that something like that might be the dream vehicle.
Okay. Cool. Are you driving that nowadays or
No,
no?
I never got an
No.
F-150, so that's why it's a dream.
Okay. Okay. All right. What age would you go back to and live at if you could?
Well, again, as I mentioned, I think 22, you
Oh yeah,
know,
that's right.
would
Yeah,
be
you mentioned that. Yeah.
a solid time.
Yeah, yeah. Let me ask you this. You got a field trip as a kid you went to? I don't know if you had any,
You know,
you know.
I saw this question that, you know, I don't recall many. I want to say maybe the zoo. You know,
Yeah.
that was, I
Okay.
think, a
My dad was a
common
big fan
one.
of
You
the
get
zoo.
on
He
a
liked the
bus and go to
zoo.
the zoo.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I was a school crossing guard monitor. You know, that was a whole big
Yeah.
thing in the day at Commodore Sloat, where I went to grammar school, and they had a big festival for all the guard people, and it was like a parade at the polo fields in Golden Gate Park. You know, that's a memory that really really hits back to me.
Yeah. Okay. Did you ever experience the Playhouse back in the day? My dad brought that up. The Playhouse, they had the big. Did you ever go to that back in the day?
Down at the beach, Playland at the beach. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that was
Playland. Yeah.
a
Playland.
huge
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
for my brothers and I. My gosh, they had this slide where you'd slide down on this canvas bag, and you know they had
Yeah.
bumper cars and all sorts of fun stuff. That was you know that was definitely a thing when I was, I don't know, 12, 13, 14. You know, when you
Yeah.
got to be 16, 17, you know, it wasn't cool anymore for, you know,
Oh.
13, 14-year-old. It was very cool.
Okay. Cool. Good one. So, what generation are you from? I'm guessing you a baby boomer
Yeah, I was born in
or
1952.
okay.
I've never understood all those categories. We actually had a chat with my daughter the other day, who's got a 1 year old, and trying to figure out what he would be
Yeah.
called. But yeah, being born
Yeah,
in
I think it's
19,
Gen Y, the next one coming
he's
up, I
what?
think. Next. I might be a Gen Y,
Okay.
I think, that's coming up, but yeah. But it's but yeah, but what are your thoughts with the chat GPT and the technology and the kids nowadays getting it? And I had it grasped like kind of in the middle, but what do you think about that and stuff with the chat,
You know,
all
at
that stuff
first
now?
I was sort of oblivious to it, but now on
Hmm.
my computers at home, I use this Microsoft Copilot, which is awesome. And
Okay.
it's incredible when you put in a question, how quickly the answer comes up and the detail. It's sort of like
Yeah.
Google search on steroids. And it's
Yeah.
really been very helpful for me. You know, some consulting work I'm doing that, my goodness, it just is such a time saver, and it seems to be very accurate. So, you know, very
Yeah.
cool.
Cool. Go on. What movie have you watched recently that you liked?
Well, I went
Good or
back and
bad?
watched one that my dad was kind of related to, PT 109, which was about
Okay.
the PT boats in the Navy during World War II that John Kennedy was on. My dad was a doctor in those groups in the Solomon Islands, out in the Pacific
Yeah.
Ocean, and just on a whim, we watched that movie, which was fun. I'm kind of a short attention span guy. I'm early to
Yeah.
bed, then my wife watches a movie at night.
Okay.
And my favorite one I like to catch every couple, 3, 4 years is The Great Escape with Steve McQueen. You know, in a German prison, escapes and gets thrown back in, you know, to this confined, you know, kind of a eclectic movie believer.
Okay. Let me ask you this: what's your favorite golf movie? Oh, there's a few out there, but what's your top one? I like Happy Gilmore from me, but
Yeah, I
what's
think
your
Happy Gilmore was fun, and Tin Cup.
yeah?
You know,
Okay.
it's without making it a sort of a documentary. It's hard to
Yeah.
be super accurate, you know, but it's
Yeah.
fun. I had several friends that were in Happy Gilmore and
Okay.
in Tin Cup that were, golf pros that I
Yeah.
grew up playing with. And now Happy Gilmore's got another one coming out soon that I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to seeing.
Okay. Cool. Were they extras in the movie, or were they just like what golf people, just
Yeah, there was
golfers? What
a
was their
couple of
roles in
extras, but
those?
also players. One guy that I grew up playing
Okay.
with, Mark Lai, he wore a gold jacket and was supposedly one of the tournament players champions and greeted, the
Okay.
guys when they came in. So I don't think he's in the new one. He's probably what they
Okay.
call aged out, I guess.
Yeah. Got it. Are you an Apple or Android guy?
I have an Apple phone, which I got converted out of Android because I was the only one in my family that wasn't Apple, and I was sort
Okay.
of an outcast. But I don't have
Okay.
any Apple computers. I have a couple of Dell products, and an Android
Mhm.
laptop, or a tablet, I should say. So I got a
Okay.
variety of technology going on.
All right. Yeah, I'm an Apple guy too, so I see it. But people are back
Yeah.
and forth. You know. Let me ask you this: you want to share a tip of the week, or business tip, or golf tip? With
Well,
some
I'll
of our
give you
listeners.
one of my favorite golf tips. There was a book called Swing the Clubhead by Ernest Jones. It was
Okay.
written in
Yeah.
1917. And he basically said, keep the grip light, pressure, let the clubhead
Mhm.
do the work. Ernie Els, Freddie Couples, those are great examples of those swings. It's called
Yeah.
effortless power. YouTube is a great way to look at it, and I'll be give myself a plug here again, hookedongolf.com. I've got a number of articles there where I write about the golf swing and golf tips. So, but I'd say light grip pressure, don't swing too hard, hit enough club to get to the green.
Cool. Good tip. Good tip right there. Who do you want to sit down and eat with? Their live, you can pick somebody.
I'd say Warren Buffett. I'm a big fan. I've read a couple of his books. I like what he says. I guess the hard thing is that where he's got like, I don't know, 400 billion in cash. So it's hard to think the way he, or it's easy to think the way that he does. Hard for
Yeah.
us to think the way he does, but I'm a big fan.
Okay. Yeah, Warren Buffett, he's a big real estate guy too, mogul, everything. He's,
He's
got
he's
his
got
hands in a lot
everything
of
going,
stuff, but
and it's all stuff.
yeah.
He says you should invest in things you understand. Don't invest
Okay.
in something you don't understand because
Yeah.
how are you going to know how they're succeeding or not?
Yeah. How about an elevator? If you're stuck in an elevator, who do we stuck in an elevator with?
I'd go back
Pick
to
somebody.
golf and say Arnold Palmer, who's not with us any longer.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I had a great chance to basically have breakfast with him at a tournament up in
Okay.
Napa. And there's a great picture of that on our
Silverado?
website where they told him it was a 40-minute wait for breakfast. We were doing the radio show. I said, Arnie,
Yeah.
come over here. I said, you can sit at our table here and have your breakfast. Oh, can I do that? Is that okay? Yeah. Come on. And then I said, hey, do you mind if we stick a microphone in front of you? And we spent 30 minutes talking about, his health, his life, the status of
Yeah.
golf at the time. It was a real special moment.
Was this at the Napa Silverado course?
Silverado for the Transamerica Senior Tournament, and
Okay.
he was very involved because the management company that he worked with owned that tournament,
Mhm.
and he'd come and either play or be around. So, very great experience.
Okay. Did you ever have to sit down with Tiger Woods or any of that type of
Had
or
I've been in a couple of press conferences. Very lucky in about 1996 when he was still playing at Stanford. He
Mhm.
was much more
Yeah.
accessible. It was when we were doing our TV show, Hooked on Golf, and we arranged an interview with him at a college tournament, and we spent about
Okay.
a half hour with him. Amazingly, there wasn't a big group of people or handlers or any of that. I've got a great picture on my mantle of my son, who was about 12 at the time, with Tiger and one of his buddies. That was a
Mhm.
great experience. And then, been around him a few other times, and media conferences that I've covered, at Pebble Beach or otherwise.
Okay. Good thoughts. Who's your favorite sports team and player?
Well, I'm a big Giants
Yeah.
fan. And
Okay. Yeah.
my grandson, who's 13, is named Will, partly named after Will Clark. And they got
Okay.
to meet recently. We have a great picture of them together. And I got to say, Will Clark or Willie Mays. I grew up in the Willie Mays, Willie McCovey,
Yeah.
Juan Marichal era. Went to a fair number of games at the old Candlestick. So Definitely
Yeah.
Giants.
Yeah, my dad, same thing. Grew up in that era with the, McCovey, Mays, Candlestick. What are some memories about the Candlestick or Giants that
Well,
stick out
I'll
to
tell you
you?
what,
You know?
that era, a player was on the team for 15 years. There was none of this, you
Hmm.
rent a guy for a year and a half, get him at the end of the season, plays one more year. I think it's hard
Yeah,
to
yeah,
get sort of affiliated with a player and really love the team that
yeah.
way. That's the one
Uh-huh.
thing that really sticks out is the fact that you knew these guys were going to be there for a goodly amount of time. I love Kruko and Kuiper. Through my
Yeah,
media work, I've gotten to meet them over the years. They're exactly what you see on TV or on the radio. Really, really great guys.
yeah. Cool. Yeah, they are. Did you watch wrestling as a kid, and do you have a favorite wrestler? I know this had WrestleMania this past weekend, but did you watch that as a
Well,
kid? You
I
know?
went to a couple at the Cow Palace, and maybe because of his name,
Yeah.
but Haystack Calhoun, was one of my
Okay.
favorites. I
Okay.
remember watching roller derby that was at the Cow Palace, and
I
that
remember
was
that. Yeah,
that
my
was
dad brought
fun.
that up too. Yeah.
Wrestling wise, I got to go with Haystack Calhoun. He was huge, a huge
Okay.
guy, and
Okay. Let me ask you this. What advice would you give yourself at 12 years old?
say it again.
What advice would you give yourself at 12 years old?
I think I was nice to most everybody, but be nice to everybody and respect your parents. I found that when I had my kids at about 30, the light went on. I realized, oh my gosh, look at everything that my parents had to do for me. And that was really a point of reflection. And unfortunately, my mom was gone at that point, but I reflected that to my dad often. He made it to 86.
Yeah.
That was just the revelation for me.
Okay. How long you been a homeowner for, and what do you like about the city you live in?
Well, we don't have parking problems where I live. I can park on my
Okay.
street, park in my driveway.
Yeah.
We've owned two homes for a total of about 47 years. We've been in this house for
Wow.
42 years.
Wow.
The peninsula, San Francisco Peninsula, is easy to get to many places. The manageable. The weather is good. We don't have a
Hmm.
lot of congestion, and we don't have crime that you have in a more major city like a San Francisco, San Jose, or an Oakland.
Yeah. Gotcha. Good one. Let me ask you this. If you weren't in the golfing world for your job, what would you be doing?
I always
Yeah.
thought that at the end of playing golf, I'd like to be like a marketing representative for a sporting good company, maybe related to golf, maybe related to
Okay.
being like a player agent or, a liaison with players.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's funny because I've done a little bit of that. I've repped a couple of golf products and I'm involved with a new golf training aid that I'm consulting on now, even in
Okay.
my retirement. My daughter says I'm not very
Yeah.
good at being retired. I keep working a little bit and get these little projects that pop up from time to time, but I think it keeps me going because I'm not a sit in the hammock and read a book type of guy.
Yeah. What about have you saw PXG clubs? What do you think about those?
Yeah, I just actually spoke with somebody from there, and I'm supposed to go to one of their locations soon and learn a little bit more about it. The
Yeah.
main designer for Ping for like 20 years, named Mike Nicolette, who was a tour player, he now is the main designer for PXG.
Okay.
And here's a trivia question, and he's an East Bay guy, James Hahn, who played the PGA Tour. He was the first player to win a tournament with PXG clubs. He won the LA Open playing those
Okay.
clubs.
Okay. Cool. Good one. What's your club you using nowadays? What are you swinging? What's your brand?
Mostly TaylorMade. So I've got a
Yeah.
TaylorMade driver. I got a couple of very old hybrids from Adams that
Mhm.
was bought by TaylorMade. And then as I've grown older, I bought a more senior set off of eBay. That's an older set of TaylorMade clubs.
Okay.
And I got a garage full of putters, by the
Which
way.
so okay. So what's your favorite club in your bag?
Oh boy, I'd say driver. I've
Yeah.
driven the ball very well over the years. Growing up
Yeah.
playing what they call parkland golf courses like Harding Park and the Olympic Club and others in the area, you had to be a straight driver of the ball or else. So I've always put a lot of priority on getting the ball in the fairway.
What's the toughest course in the city? Hardin Park, Olympic. What are the hardest ones? I mean,
I'd say,
that people that really.
of the public courses, I'd say Harding and Presidio are probably, a toss up. I think
Yeah.
If the weather was up like windy or cold or foggy, Presidio, I'd play Harding. But Harding
Hmm.
and Presidio, I'd say are the two.
Okay. Yeah, I played Presidio, played Harden. Harden was tough in the rough. Presidio was very windy.
Yes,
Around 4 or 5, it just
yes.
crazy wind. Yeah. Do you got a favorite video game or board game growing up?
I guess Monopoly is hard to beat. I was never
Yeah.
much of a video game guy, and either were my kids. But I don't know. I guess I got to go back to Monopoly.
Did you ever play the Atari? I know my dad got into that a little bit, but did you ever get into that a little bit or
A
no?
tiny bit. I remember
Yeah.
one of the real early ones, Pong,
Pong?
that was like this
Yeah.
thing that would bounce, and you have a little paddle, and it would bounce, and But that
Yeah.
was, I mean, that was like a real dinosaur of the games.
Yeah. What's your drink of choice?
My what?
Drink of choice.
I'd say a Pinot Noir and maybe a Hardy IPA. And
Okay.
I guess a vodka now and then,
Good
but
one.
try to keep it
Yeah.
to a minimum.
Yeah. You got a favorite emoji you want to share with us that you
I
use?
like this a little guy with a big smile with a cowboy hat on. I don't know if you
Okay.
know that one, but
I've seen that one.
I
Yeah.
kind of like
Yeah.
that
I've
one.
seen
And
that.
then the one where people will use the little pile of poo, it's still funny. So
Yeah, the poop
yeah, but I
emoji.
like the little guy with the cowboy
Uh,
hat and the little smile.
Let me ask you this. So nominate someone that'd be a good guest on the show. I could get on here, maybe interview and put out
Yeah,
there.
there's a woman I'm
Um,
working with on this golf product right now. Her name's Sarah Sanders,
yeah.
who actually lives right in the
Okay.
neighborhood there. She's a
Okay.
past LPGA player. She
Okay.
teaches and she's involved with a couple of the junior golf programs, and
Okay.
very lively. She does a lot of corporate golf work. I'll send you her
Mhm.
contact info.
Yeah. If you shoot me an email, so I'll reach out to her,
Yep.
maybe get on here. So it'd be cool. And then something on the bucket list, John, that you haven't done yet. What's on the list that you
I
want to do?
mentioned I do a fair amount of fishing. I'd love to tie into a
Yeah.
bluefin tuna. Maybe
Okay.
I don't know, a couple 100 pound one. So
Yeah. Okay.
that'd be kind of fun.
So where do you go fish at? Where are your spots? Are you deep sea fishing,
Yeah,
or
mostly,
where do you like going fishing?
when I was younger, I did a fair amount of river fishing. My dad was a
Yeah.
fisherman, but I do halibut fishing in San Francisco Bay, and then when
Okay.
it's available, salmon, out the Golden Gate, up the coast, Ensign
Yeah.
Beach,
Yeah.
Muir Beach.
Yeah.
That's sort of my go-to
Yeah.
areas. The last 2 summers, salmon has been canceled in Northern California, and I went to Canada,
Mhm.
British Columbia on a fly-in trip where you fly to
Oh
Vancouver and then
wow.
an hour and a half on a float plane to this lodge with boats. And my God, it was just a fabulous, fabulous trip. So that was cool.
Okay. And then how we follow you? I know you got hooked on golf back in the day, but how we find you and stuff on social media or where we at
Yeah,
to get in touch
I'm
with
on
you?
Facebook. I'm on Twitter with my name, John Abendroth, and then hookedongolf.com. I do some interviews like this with notable golfers. I've
Okay.
done Gary Player and
Yeah.
Dave Stockton, Rocco Mediate, a number of notable other golf people, and then I write
Yeah.
stories like I mentioned earlier. This article I wrote about the Masters, sort of the state of golf, and other things that pop up. So that's
Yeah.
been good to kind of like I say, keep my mind in the game.
All right. And we'll wrap up here, but we are on Spotify. I don't know if you're on Spotify too, John, but we're on there. If you need any real estate questions or golf tips, reach out to John. I'm here for real estate questions or anything like that. But from on the spot, we're out of
Cool.
here
Thank you so much, and appreciate the interest. And good to hook up with you, and we'll stay in touch.
for sure. All right, from on the spot, we're out of here.